Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in the region right now trying to broker a ceasefire, working around the clock, meeting with world leaders, just as Hamas finds itself on the ropes in the wake of the killing of Yahya Sinwar, the architect of the 10/7 attacks. Meanwhile, the war continues to heat up to Israel's north. Hezbollah continues to land direct strikes at Israel. Israel is pounding the group, clearing out villages in southern Lebanon, hitting financial targets and military targets throughout the Beirut stronghold of Dahia. Meanwhile, that broader ring of fire strategy that Iran has constructed threatens to attack Israel from multiple fronts, just as Israel threatens to attack Iran in response to that barrage of 181 ballistic missiles earlier this month. Lots going on here. I'm Jonathan Schanzer, Senior Vice President for Research at Foundation for Defense of Democracies. I am pleased to welcome Jacob Nagel. Jacob is a Brigadier General Reserves in the IDF. He's a senior fellow here at FDD. He is the head of the so-called Nagel Commission, which approved and endorsed the use of Iron Dome. He's the man that negotiated the Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU, that is going to continue to fund Israel's defense efforts through the year 2028. He is also right now head of an incredibly important committee that is designed to determine the budget and the usage of that budget for the IDF for the next 10 years. We've got a lot going on. I want to bring Jacob in right now. And Jacob, I want to start with what's going on in the South. We look right now at Hamas. It looks like it's beginning to really fall apart and collapse after Sinwar's death. How do you assess what's going on in the South? And is there a chance of getting a deal with Blinken in the region right now?
I think it's important that you started with the South, even so I think that the North and Iran will be much more important as of those days. But in the South, exactly what was planned almost a year ago, exactly, then the intensity of the conflict or the intensity of the IDF forces working in Gaza is naturally going down because Hamas is not existing anymore as a military organization. But don't be confused. There are many terrorists in the area. So this is why Israel is keeping, and it's very important to emphasize it, Israel is keeping its three main pinpoint holdings. It's the Philadelphia corridor, it's the Netzarim corridor, and it's the stripe around our borders between Gaza and Israel. Those three very important holders will approve us that we can continue to do what we want in Gaza.
So let's talk about each one of those just very briefly. Let's talk about the importance of the Philadelphia corridor, Netzarim, and these border zones. So let's start with Netzarim. What is important about Israel keeping that right now?
Netzarim is very, very important because it divided Gaza to two, and it's making sure that the terrorists from the south not going to the north, and most important, things from the north are not going to the south, and unless we want it, for example, when we evacuate citizens from the north to the south. But most important is that we are not allowing the Hamas remains in the northern part of Gaza to reestablish their ammunition, their forces, and when we will be adding to it, controlling the humanitarian aid, and we don't want to make the Gazan people suffer, but we don't want Hamas take the humanitarian aid from weapons and money. So when this will happen, I think that the northern part of Gaza will be taken care of. So this is the very important part of Netzarim.
Okay, so now that we know Netzarim, let's go to Philadelphia. This is the one.
When we go to Philadelphia, it's very important. And again, with all the precautions that we have to make sure with the Egyptians, that we don't want to make the tension between Israel and them stronger than it is, it's important to make sure that Israel is controlling Philadelphia corridor above and underground, so the stream of weapons, the stream of help that used to come from Egypt to Gaza will stop. This, I'm not sure it stopped 100%, but it's really, we can say that we are striking, we are like not letting them to have their stream of life that helps them to continue, and we have to make sure that to continue. If we leave it, it will stop.
And of course, we hear from the Egyptians that there is no smuggling going on along that Philadelphia corridor. That's an interesting point of tension. Maybe that's a conversation for another time. But now let's talk about that border area, Jacob.
Okay.
What about the border area?
There is less smuggling, much less smuggling than before. I cannot say there is no smuggling at all. If we go to the border, it's the easiest part. And I think it's even the easiest part for Israel to sell to the world, because we know what happened during along this border in October 7, and we have to make sure that there is a clear and clean stripe. It can be a kilometer and a half, and 2, and we will come to it when we'll go to the north, that we can make sure that our people that came back to their kibbutzim, to their villages, they don't have a direct threat coming from Gaza. They don't have it now, but we have to make sure that even in any arrangement and agreement, it will stay like it is today.
And of course, that's going to get controversial if Israel makes this buffer zone inside Gaza itself. That's probably going to elicit at least some challenges from the international community, certainly from the Palestinians.
I'm saying world. Buffer zone without Israeli forces inside. It's a buffer zone that I call it's a killing zone, meaning everyone that enters this zone is dead.
And of course, that will not go over well if it eats into Gazan territory. But again, I think that's a conversation for another time. I want to move north.
Again, without Israeli forces on Gaza soil when there will be an agreement.
Right. Understood. All right, let's move north, because this is, I think, the big war right now. As Gaza continues to, I think, lower in intensity, we see the north heating up. I think, look, there are a few things to talk about here. One is an achievement that you and I spoke about before the program that I'm not sure that everybody fully understands. And that is that before this war began, the understanding was that Hezbollah was going to be able to darken Israel's skies with upwards of thousands of rockets, 2 or 3 or even 4,000 rockets per day. What Israel's done, at least this is what I understand from you, is it's made it so that the capabilities are not zeroed out, but that what we're seeing right now is still is now like 200 or 250 rockets a day. That's obviously unsustainable for Israel, but it's a lot better than 2,000 or 3,000 rockets. So can you please explain how this happened, and is this actually good news, and where are we going from here?
I am coming to your question, but one last sentence about the South that we didn't talk about. Remember that beside these 3 points, we are achieving that every time when we see someone rising, we can go in, we send our forces like in Jabalia, in Zaytun, in Khan Yunis, in Rafah, in, out, in, out. This is exactly what we're doing in the south. And of course, we have Muhammad Sinwar to kill yet and some more. Now about the north and your question. Remember when we talked before and people said, look, there will be 3,000 rockets a day, there will be hundreds of deaths every day. And again, everyone that died, and there are many, especially in this month, every day we hear about another 4, another 5, because when we have our forces on the ground, and we are doing now what we must do, exactly what we did in the south, we are clearing a stripe of 2.5, 3, maybe a little bit more, all over the northern border. We found there many ammunitions. Almost every home in every village was a depot for ammo. Never mind if it was a home with children, ladies, people, elders, no matter what, above ground and mostly below ground, there are villages that the whole village have another village under the village that it's this. But because of what we did and because of the preemption that you just mentioned, the Hezbollah, I'm not saying they cannot, but probably they cannot and they don't want to use 3,000. So they are using the short range, the mid range, and almost none of the very long-range missiles that they don't have too many, in order to, disturb us, and they are disturbing us. Look, I'm going to my shelter once a day or two, but my friends in Haifa and in other places in the north are going 10 or 5 or 20 times a day. And when you go to other places, they are going maybe 25 times a day. It's bothering us, but it's still not the hundreds of people died. Civilians that died from missiles. Believe me, from one terror action in Tel Aviv, maybe more dead than all the missiles together. But I'm not, undertaking any dead, and that we have to stop it. Now, when we are talking about the North, and we cannot ignore that Israel is now doing what it should do, we are eating the terrorists all over the border, clearing the stripe. We are eating their command posts and their centers inside Dahya, and even much, much, much deeper inside Lebanon, in Baalbek, in other places. Every place that there is a threat, or we are understanding that there is a warehouse or something that is threatening Israel. Of course, launchers, after the launch, mostly we are killing the launchers. Sometimes we cannot do it in advance because it's underground. So we are doing exactly what we want. Of course, there is a tension in the north between our will and our need, and one of our new war goals, to bring back our citizens safely to their homes, to keep our forces peacefully, and still to eat the Hezbollah all over, all sides, short, medium, and long. And of course, there are forces from all over the world that are trying to stop us, but they are not going to do it.
So a lot to unpack here, Jacob. And of course, this is the hot war that Israel is dealing with at the moment, the major one. I think, one thing to point out is that we've not really gotten an assessment of how much damage exactly has been done to Israel's north. We know that there are 150,000 people or so that have either been forced to evacuate or have chosen to evacuate. And we've got a lot of damage to the north. That northern area continues to sustain damage. And that, of course, is a main reason why the Israeli forces are there. Now, I do want to ask you, though, about one of the recent objectives of the IDF. It appears that there is a campaign underway to destroy the financing of Hezbollah. We heard about some of the strikes against this informal banking sector that Hezbollah calls Al-Qard al-Hassan. We know that there were a bunch of buildings and infrastructure that was destroyed. But then we had this amazing announcement by Daniel Hagari the other day, where he revealed the existence of an underground vault that has $500 million or more in cash and gold. Is there a bigger strategy underway to try to undermine Hezbollah's finances, or is that, you think, the end of what we're going to see there?
It's not the end, for sure. And if you remember, we'll go back a few years ago when we talked about ISIS, and we said the three pillars of a terror organization is command and control, is financing, and is, of course, ideology. And usually the first two you can destroy. The third one mostly remains, it's social media and others. So when the coalition in US destroyed for ISIS in Mosul and Raqqa the finance and the command and control, it was the start of the end of ISIS. Exactly the same is going now in Hezbollah. We destroyed not all, but many of their command posts, command and control, and of course their weapons and their capabilities of threatening the state of Israel, even if it's still there. And now we are going for the second pillar of a terror organization, is their money. They are getting money mostly from Iran, and we will come back a little bit to Iran because they are the multi-front runners. They want everything to happen around us and not to them. It's going to end. But when you take out the money, people are not coming. Some of the people are mercenaries. They need money. Without money, the Hezbollah cannot buy food, they cannot buy weapons, they cannot give the money to the people around them to support them. So it's the beginning of an end of a terror organization, command and control, and money, and I think we will see it continuing. They don't have the same banking system that, like, I don't know, Iran or ISIS had, but still there are banks that are helping them, not only in Lebanon, all around, sometimes in Arab countries, sometimes in other Middle Eastern countries, and we'll have to take care that the money flow will not continue to go to Hezbollah, and Iran have a very important role in it, and we have to stop it. It started when we controlled the airport, we controlled the planes not coming, not bringing money or weapons or other aid to the Hezbollah. It's
And
very, very important.
yeah,
to
I think we
continue.
can see the beginnings of or maybe even the follow through of a strategy, which I think, many people were wondering what this strategy would be. I think what you've just done here is lay out what that strategy is. But let me add one more component to this, which is the diplomatic angle, right? We now know, of course, that, we've got Secretary Blinken in the region. It's a goal of this administration to head off a wider regional war. Of course, I think we have to acknowledge that a wider regional war is underway, but there are efforts right now to bring an end to this conflict. We have people like U.S. Envoy Amos Hochstein spending a lot of time in Israel and in Lebanon trying to get the enforcement of UN Security Council Resolution 1701, which would potentially force Hezbollah north of the Litani River and potentially bring about a sustainable, let's just call it an armistice state in this war. What is Israel's view right now about the possibility of such an arrangement?
This is an issue that I think it's too early to talk about, but still, people are saying that the solution is diplomacy. I'm not sure it's right. I'm not sure it's wrong. We have to give a chance to diplomacy. Only one condition: full security to the citizens of the state of Israel, and we cannot go again to the same, trap that was the old 1701. If there will be a 1701, a new one, a better one, with a lot of monitoring and control, not by UNIFIL, but people that you can support. It can be LAF, it can be international, it cannot be UNIFIL that just standing there and almost doing nothing. But it also have to be adding in the 1559, meaning taking disarm all terror, all non-state actors in Lebanon. They are not allowed to have any weapons. I'm not sure it's going to happen. So I'm not sure that we can support or count on a diplomatic, but I'm not undermining it. Of course, we have the US, we have Austin, we have to give them the floor, but Israel is not bounded to any resolution that will come out from those talks if it's not giving us a 100% security to our people, that they can go back home safely, and not for 1 week or 1 month, for many, many, many years.
Understood. I think, by the way, it's an interesting thing that I think you've just actually provided maybe a tacit endorsement of the LAF. That's interesting to me. Haven't really heard that too much out of Israel, but I can understand why.
Again, I'm not saying it's Israel view. I'm saying not UNIFIL. If the LAF will do the job, it's okay. Until now, they didn't do it.
Understood. Okay, Jacob, now I want to ask you about, I think, the thing that matters most to probably everybody watching right now. We've been waiting for 3 weeks for an Israeli strike. What is going on here? I know, of course, that there was negotiations with the White House. I know there were leaks. I know that Israel had to select its targets. How are we to understand what is probably about to happen at some point in the near future?
First of all, of course, I cannot talk on any operational activities. Assuming I know or I don't know, it doesn't matter. Now, everyone is waiting. Sometimes waiting is good. Maybe the other side won't sleep also a few weeks. It's okay. A retaliation from Israel on Iran, it's no doubt. Everyone understands. Everyone is waiting. The question is, what will be the retaliations? There are many, many, many targets that you can choose. There are military targets, civilian targets, economical targets, nuclear targets, anything, you can choose it. You can do everything. You can do part of it, you can do some of it. I am sure that the government of Israel will decide correctly what to do. One important thing is that when targets are being chosen, and again, I'm not saying it's a bad situation that we are talking to our very best allies from the United States, hearing what they are saying, getting their inputs. At the end, as the Prime Minister said, Israel will do what is good for its own security, and the decisions will be made only by Israeli government, no matter what you will see. Believe me, the decisions will be made only by the Israeli government. So, the one important sentence that I want to convey is that once a target is being chosen, it has to be 100% destroyed. The success is very, very important. If someone will ask me, and fortunately for me, they are not asking, if I can have 4 targets, 50% success, or 2 targets, 100% success, I'll tell him take two targets and do it 100% success. So at the end, we have to signal, we have to send messages, we have to understand the Iranian side, that they are behind everything that is happening around us. They are responsible for the multi-front war that Israel is facing now, almost 7 fronts together. I'm really, really glad I'm opening a sideline that it's very good that the United States, together with the UK, took one of the fronts lately and they attacked Yemen, and they attacked, again, I won't say it's enough, not enough, but they did something to show the Yemens, the Houthis, that they cannot continue threatening, the international sea routes and others, and even threatening American assets in the area. So it's very important, and I wish the United States will continue doing it in Yemen, in Iraq, in Iran, in other places. Not that I am expecting them to do it, for example, in Iran. But the important thing is that there will be a retaliation. Now, everyone is guessing, we are now entering to a ping pong. There is a attack, and there is a retaliation, and there is another attack, and there is a response. And when the equation is closed, I don't know. Of course, it always depends on what every side is deciding he wants to continue or not. I think both sides don't want a total war, not Iran, not Israel. This war will happen in the future. We talked about it many, many times. I think that a wide war between Israel and Iran is inevitable. It happened. It can be in 2 years, 4 years, next week, or in 2 months, or maybe in 7 years. I don't know. Unless one thing will happen. And I'm not suggesting that Israel will do it. Unless there is another regime in Iran that understands that it's much better to take care for the Iranian people, because Israel don't have a war with the Iranian people. The Prime Minister approaches them many, many times. Say, I don't have anything against you. Your leadership, your clerical regime is taking the money, and Iran could be a very, very prosperous, prospect, and they have a lot of nature research. They can be one of the most flourishing countries in the world, but the regime take the money and build nuclear facilities, nuclear bombs. They want to run to a bomb. So one way to stop it is to make
Bring
the
down the regime.
Iranian people,
Bring down the regime, bring in
the
something
Iranian
else.
people have to take the regime down,
So
and we in Israel have to take care that they are not going to run the bomb. Now the most important thing is to take care about the weapon system. The enrichment is very important to continue controlling it, but believe me, it's coming to the second priority now. So we have to take care.
got it.
Weakening
So think
the
about.
regime.
I have a couple more questions for
about
you.
the weaponization system, but we have to make sure one thing: the Iranian scheme that worked for the last 20 years, and the Israeli scheme was that we are, attacking around us, and of course there is what we call the Mabam, the war between wars in Iran and around us. But the tactics that there is an octopus head in Iran and he's running all these tentacles around Israel and is not going to remain clean. Now, believe me, don't go if it's a octopus or a lion or a cat. You choose the animal. I don't care. They have to understand that the time is coming that the Israel is not going to attack only the one that attacks her directly, but also those that are funding them, training them, and sending them all the instructions what to do. I'm not saying that the Iran gave the instructions to Hamas to do it on October 7, but they knew it's coming beside the date. The same for Hezbollah, the same for the Houthis, the same for the militias, even in Syria and even in the PA. All is orchestrated by Iran. They have to start suffering themselves.
Understood. And those are some tough words. And I think you're probably channeling the way that the Israeli government looks at this. But let me ask you, as we have to wrap things up.
Remember, I'm not part of the government anymore.
No, I understand, but you're channeling the thinking.
The Jacob Nagel view.
Understood. Now, I want to ask you, in response to this forthcoming Israeli strike, and we know that there will be one, it's a question of when and not if. In response to that, do you expect the Iranians to, you said that they are not interested in escalation, they don't want a full war. Does that mean that they direct their proxies from Yemen, from Iraq, from Syria, from the West Bank to respond to Israel, in addition to Hezbollah and Iran, where we already see a great deal of violence? Is this something that you expect? Do you expect Israel to sustain a more intense multi-front attack in response to the expected Israeli strike?
This is if I have to ask one question that from all this interview, it's the $1 million question. This is the one. Now, there are two views to look on this question. First of all, that your reaction is based not on what the other side intended to do, but what the other side really did to you. What are the real damages? And some views are, no, we don't have to look on what the other side, but what they intended to do. There are pros and cons for each path. And in the end, it's the decision of every side when we are putting an end for this kind of back and forth. I know that both sides will I guess, no, it's not good to say, I guess that both sides will evaluate what is going on, and this back and forth can end in 5 minutes, in 5 hours, in 5 days, or in 5 weeks, and unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, it depends also on the size of every side retaliation and the damages that everyone is doing to the other side. If you take the April retaliation of almost more than 3,000 objects running about Israel decided then to retaliate in a small scale by sending him a signal to Iran, we can do this and this and this. It was a very small scale. Still, Israel also retaliate against Iranian assets and things that they are very, very important for them in our area, in Syria, in Lebanon, in other places. Iran didn't accept the message, and they did another retaliation on Israel lately, for this time only a ballistic missile, but still around 200 ballistic missiles, and Israel will retaliate. As you said, the question is not if, but when, and how much, and what will be the targets. I'm really glad that everyone is waiting for it. It's good that the other side is waiting.
A bit of psychological operation happening here.
I think it's a psychological war also, but it will be for the Iranians to understand how they are retaliating to what happened. Again, based on what will be the success, or what will be the cause, or what will be the targets, I don't know. It's for them to decide, and then Israel will have to decide what we are doing against what they will do, and then they will have to decide what they are doing against what we do. And sometimes it can go anyway. It can go to a full war. it can go to, okay, we finish this round, we have to wait. I don't think it will go to something that Israel don't like.
Understood.
It's attrition. We cannot go to, okay, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's not good.
It's not good for anybody.
Not
I
good.
think it's
good
not
for
good
Israel.
for the
I think
regime
it's also
either.
not good for Iran, but
Yeah.
it's not good for Israel to do it. We have still a war in south. We have a war in the north. We have to finish it. So, but we cannot allow a terror. It's not a terror country because Iran is a country. It's not a terror organization, but they are acting like a terror organization. They are doing things that a sovereign country is not doing. It's a crazy that they're still members of the UN, and the UN is even giving them to add some committees. They are the only member of the UN that declared that they want to destroy another member of the UN, and nothing happened.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
want
Well,
to destroy
the UN's
Israel.
another problem for another time.
Yes, but
Jacob,
what
I
I'm
want to
saying
thank
is
you. We
they
need to
not
wrap
allow
up here
it
as
to
we've hit a
continue.
half-hour mark. I want to thank you for
Yes.
joining this special sit-rep edition of the FDD briefing series. We're obviously watching all of these fronts. I think you've done an excellent job of describing the calculus that Israel now must look at as it relates to the south, to the north, to the threat out of Iran itself, the forthcoming Israeli strike, whenever that comes. Jacob Nagel, I want to thank you for joining us today. I'm Jonathan Schanzer, signing off for FDD.
Let's talk after we will know what happened.